Welcome back, plastic addicts, and today we're going to be doing an inbox review of the Airfix Spitfire Mk.Vc. So before we get into the inbox review, I just want to thank everyone that watched the last video of the Airfix new releases that I did last week. As of recording this, there's been like 10,000 people that have watched it, which is like absolutely insane. So thank you to you guys, and there's also been some really interesting discussion in the comments as well, talking about, you know, what kits people were looking forward to, whether people like the lineups and that. So thanks for commenting as well, and I've had some really interesting discussions with people about their thoughts on it as well. So without further ado, let's get on to the review. So the Airfix Spitfire Mk.Vc came out around December time. I've only just really got round to doing the inbox review, and there's some of the YouTubes out there have had a look inside the box, but I want to give my thoughts on it as well. So the Mk.Vc. So the Spitfire, if there's ever an aircraft that's been synonymous with the RAF and the World War II, this is the fighter plane that kind of covers the... If there's ever been a fighter aircraft that's synonymous with the RAF and with World War II, it is the Spitfire. The Mk.Vc in particular was actually a stopgap. It was actually to help combat the latest of the Luftwaffe's aircraft, like the Focke-Wulf 190, that completely outpowered all of current marks of Spitfires that were being used. It was introduced with an upgraded Merlin engine, producing more power, whilst the Mark 9 Spitfire was being developed at the time. And even though the Mark V was to be an interim design whilst the Mark 9 was being made, it actually became one of the most produced Spitfires that was ever made, with almost 6,500 of them actually being produced. Not only was the Mark V produced in such large numbers, but it also saw service all around the world during World War II, from the European theatre to the Mediterranean, North Africa theatre, as well as the Far East as well. So now we're going to go take a look at the kit, look at the box, look at the instructions, and look at the plastic that's in there as well. Right, so we'll start by having a look on the outside of the box. As you can see, it's a top opener, which is always good. Acts as a nice little tray to keep all your parts in as you're working through it, keep your sprues organised. On the front of the box, some awesome artwork, as is normal with Airfix kits nowadays, and as well as the two different marking schemes as a side profile just on the left hand side of the box. Bit of information about the Mk.Vc written across here, and your standard Airfix flying hours. So let's get this open. And we have one instruction booklet printed in black, white and red, as per normal nowadays. Oh, and a bit of yellow as well. The decals. And these were in a bag, but I had a quick look inside the box beforehand. We've got the clear parts, and we have 1, 2, 4 sprues of grey plastic. Looks like the normal Airfix plastic that we know and love nowadays. So we'll take a look at the sprues now. This first sprue that I pulled out has lots of the small parts on it, including looks like slipper tanks on there, parts for the wings, the underside of the wings, sorry, like the oil coolers and radiators, and some of the internal parts, as well as a pilot as well. Second sprue, set of wings on there. Third sprue, more of the cockpit, the seat, bulkhead and dash, as well as 2 different types of props as well, and the landing gear. And finally, we have the sprue with the fuselage halves and another top set of wings. So we'll take some closer look at the inside of the sprues. As you can see, with the fuselage halves, it's missing some detail at the bottom, but that's covered by... So on these parts here, which sit inside of the lower part of the fuselage, they retain the rest of the detail for the cockpit. However, it's a bit disappointing to see there's actually ejection pin marks on these parts here when they could have been moulded on the flip side and have them on this So these two components So these two parts here fit in the lower half of the fuselage on the inside. They retain some quite crisp detail on there and also help locate the other parts for the cockpit, the bulkheads, framework, as well as the dash as well. However, it's a bit disappointing to see there's ejection pin marks on the inside of this detail. Now, whether they'll be seen or not, I don't know until we actually try and build this one up. There's enough space on the back side here where they wouldn't necessarily be seen and they'd be glued up against the fuselage wall. So it's a bit of a poor placement of ejection pins there. However, looking at the rest of the parts in on this sprue, there's some nice crisp detail and a well detailed dashboard, which would be nice to paint rather than just a flat dashboard where you just stick a decal on it. Makes a nice change from some of the Airfix ones, and it gives a bit of depth to the dash as well. And the rest of the cockpit detail in here and this sprue doesn't have any flash on it at all, not that I can see, or anything that's of particular concern either. One thing that is worth noting about this kit is it does come with two separate shapes of upper wings. So we have the normal double elliptical type tip here with the point on it, and we also have the cut wingtip type here as well. Now we'll have a look inside the instruction manual in a moment, and we'll see if both types are used in the decal schemes that are offered in the kit. But it's quite nice that Airfix have actually offered both types of wingtips, as there's a lot of aftermarket decals for the Mk.Vc. So it gives the modeler a lot more options as to what they can do with this kit if they do go down the aftermarket decal route. Looking at the surface detail on this kit, it's nice and crisp. The panel lines are recessed, but not so much. Probably more than some modelers would prefer, but I always find with Airfix's recent releases, the panel lines are sufficient depth. By the time you put coats of primer, pre-shade and paint on, it generally builds them up, and they sit nicely on the model and allow a panel wash to take nicely to them. The detail on the wing is also sufficient as well. Nice panel lines across there, as well as a nice raised bulge in the centre of the wing for the where the cannons would sit. There's no rivet detail on the wing, and the only rivet detail on the outside of the fuselage exists around the cowling here, where there'd be the screws to take it off for the maintenance of the Merlin engine inside. All the other sprues as well in this kit, they're finely moulded, and there seems to be no issue with flash on these, or any issues with the offset of the moulds either. Doesn't look like the moulds have shifted like this, which presents a offset line on any edges where the mould would come together. So let's have a quick look at the clear parts and see how they are. So the clear parts, there are two canopy options. We have a solid single piece here, which is where the canopy is closed, and it also gives the option to have the canopy open as well, with the main part of the canopy slid back over the rear section. I think this is a good addition to the Spitfire kit, since looking at the other parts on the sprue, they're well moulded, and it'll be a nice cockpit to actually have open to present the detail inside, rather than looking through what is a curved piece of clear plastic which refracts the light quite badly, which would prevent you from seeing the detail sort of once it's all built up. Finally, we have the decals. As per usual Airfix standard, these are pretty good. They never seem to have any trouble going on. They can be a bit thick for my liking, particularly some of the carrier film, and the actual the decals are printed quite thickly. Makes them very easy to work with. However, if you're trying to get them to conform to the panel lines and any detail on the kit, it can take some significant effort to get them to conform nicely. And finally, we have the instructions. Since Airfix started out with almost as an educational tool, teaching people about aircraft and other subject matters that they were making at the time, they've always put a good piece of information, a nice blurb, and some specifications of whatever model you're making from the kit. In this one, obviously, it's about the Mk.Vc, and it gives a bit of detail about the subject in question, as well as some stats about it, including its armament, maximum speed, etc. So opening it up, looks like a pretty standard build, building up the cockpit sections. Any actions that were taken on the step previous to it are generally highlighted in red. And we move through with the cockpit, building the seat with the armour plate, putting that into one of the little sections that we talked about earlier, which have the ejection pins on the inside. Only minor sort of problem, but it's a touch on the annoying side for me. Then the tub gets built up, goes inside the fuselage. Fuselage closes up. You also have the option to drill some holes for the slipper tank, which is an optional part to this kit. Wings get glued together, and it hasn't stated any options about the clipped wings yet, so it looks like the two decal schemes will be the normal pointy tips in this boxing. Fuselage goes to the wings, rear horizontal stabilizers, as well as the rudder. The large chin intake, or we'll call it chin take from now on. So the large chin take goes under there, which is the tropicalized underside of the nose, which has a filter inside, stops all the dust and sand from getting in the engine as they're turning the prop over on the ground on startup. It looks like we have a choice of armament depending on which scheme we pick. Underside with the wing detail goes on, so radiators, oil coolers, as well it has the option for a posable radiator flap. Landing gear option, so it's either up or down. Place a slipper tack on, exhaust, fitting the propellers. Adding the pilot into the cockpit, and then adding the canopies and the aerial. So the two options that come with the kit, they are both desert schemes. One is the 12th Air Force, United States Army Air Force, that served in Algeria in November-December 1942. This looks like quite a cool scheme to do, as you can see where the RAF roundel once was, which has been painted over, and they've painted over the other roundel with their white star, but retained the yellow banding around the outside. Other things that make this scheme pretty cool, there is a shark's mouth on it, and as we know, any aircraft with a shark's mouth is badass. And the other scheme is number 2 Squadron, South African Air Force, serving in Italy, October 1943. So these have the slightly lighter red, well, it's more orange, but what would be the red in the roundel. Same on the fin flash and the fuselage roundels and underside roundels as well. As you can see, it's also in a desert scheme using BS Dark Earth and Middlestone. And there's also a bit of research note on the side here about the springbok marking, which would often be shown on aircraft in the South African Air Force. So that's the inbox review of the Airfix Mk.V Spitfire that came out in December. It looks to be quite a nice kit, and no major issues from just looking at the boxing at the moment. The instructions seem pretty clear, and so does the construction of it as well. We'll see how it goes together at some point in the future when I get round to building this one. At the minute I've got quite a few cool builds on at the go, which we'll update again soon. One thing I do like about this kit is the different wing options that come with it that were quite common on the Mk.Vc with the clip wing tips, as well as the options for different armament and the slipper tank as well, which aren't necessarily used in the schemes in the kit, but it gives the model opportunity to use aftermarket decals and do the Mk.Vc in other schemes in its vast array of service that it undertook in World War II. So I just want to thank everyone for taking the time for watching this video. It seems to be quite a cool kit. So if anyone has built this kit already, please let me know down in the comments, you know, how it went together, if you had any issues with it and what you think of it. And if you haven't already, there's the subscribe button in red down below. I'd really appreciate it if you click subscribe, help this channel grow and get the outreach to more people as well. And if you click on the bell notification next to the subscribe button, it will ping you a notification when I've got a new video out as well. As always, stay safe, happy modelling.